Yes, welcome back to this another tutorial, and yes, today what we are going to look at is what we call Laravel CRUD operations. Now, what does this mean? CRUD simply stands for create, R stands for read, and U stands for update, D stands for the delete. Now we are going to look at a simple Laravel CRUD operation, and today we are going to first cover the first part, that is the create. So we are going to see in the CRUD we are simply referring to how we are able to add data to the database and how we are able to retrieve that data, how we are able to update and then to delete. That's the CRUD. But since CRUD it's now it can be a little bit kind of big, so we are going to capture one component at a time. For example, we're going to first look at how do we now add data to the database. Then from there, that's where we shall now look at how do we retrieve it back and how do we update and delete. So in the CRUD, we are going to first cover the first concept, that is the create. So now, without wasting time, we shall just simply proceed with our project, the one that we have been working on. So how do we do that? Just simply come here. For me, mine has been Apex demo. I'll just simply proceed with it just the same way I've been working on it in the previous tutorial. So I'll just open this, you double click on it, simple steps. We are not changing anything, simple step like that, cmd, then code space dot, then you run this, code space dot, then you run that. So it will be able to open in the VS Code. Now remember, we have been working on this. That's why you can see that we have some of the views here. We have some of the controllers here. So we are just going to, add on this. Yeah, we are going to add on this. So without wasting time, let me just simply start. And now for us to be able to create a CRUD operation, what we shall do is we are going to learn on a new concept. We are going to learn like how do we able to create something and it goes to the database. So now the first step to do that, one, you're going to create a view, just the same steps that we have been seeing in the previous videos. So we need to create a view, which we saw and we understood how to do that. After creating a view, we shall need a controller. Yes. After needing a controller, we shall need a route. Yes. From a route, we shall need a model. Then from a model, we shall need a migration. Now there are like 5 concepts. We need a view, which is the like the HTML, the user interface. We need a controller, that's number 2. We shall need a route that maps to a controller. Then we shall need a model, and lastly we shall need a migration. So that's what we need. Now, first thing first, I'll first of all create a view. Now I'm going to create this a view, for example this one, and I'll name it maybe student. Yeah, I'm going to name it student.bread.php. Yeah, so we are going to create a simple student app. Just I'm proceeding with this one. So I'm going to name it student.bread.php, and within here I'll simply now bring the skeleton, and inside this skeleton I'll create some simple form, because I'll need a form to capture some data as we are storing it in the database. So I'll need a form, but before a form, let me just put an h2. Yeah, let me just put an h2, and I'll be like student registration, just student registration. Yeah, then below this, since we're not teaching HTML, so I will be a little bit faster at this point, because already you have covered this in the previous semester. So I'll just simply come to this, then form. In form we shall need some input values, maybe name. For now leave it empty like that. Maybe you can add even a placeholder, and then you call it maybe enter your name. Then we shall just copy and duplicate this. You can simply copy and duplicate this. So it shall copy and duplicate this. We need like 3. Maybe this one can be email, and then lastly this one can be program. Yeah, program. Now here it's at email that we change text type to also email. Now I'm deliberate by leaving these name fields empty for now. You will see where we shall need them. And lastly, what we might need here is a button. So we shall need a button, and this button will have type submit. yeah, and then also the name will be submit. Okay, now you should be very careful as you're writing this. Make sure that you have the same similar values and fields how I'm writing them here. So within still this form, we shall need a method for now, and we shall leave everything empty. So let's first leave it as that. Then after creating this form, as we have seen, now the other thing we need, step number 1 is to create a view. Now step number 2 is to create a controller. So I'll need to create a student controller here, and the command we have been seeing, it is php @sun make controller, then the name of the controller, maybe this one is a student controller, so we shall call it student controller. But be mindful, you can see how I'm writing student controller like this. Yeah, in our previous tutorial we have been doing something similar to this, but the other side it was home controller, but this one we are creating a student controller. Since also the view we have created is for the student, so we want to create a student app just to be able to submit student data or register student information, then you retrieve it, something like that. So that's why I'm writing like this. But now there is something that I wanted to teach in this tutorial. Remember, we want to create the view, as I've just mentioned, the view, the controller, the route, the model, and the migration. Now, instead of creating something independent, there is a one command that can help us create the 3 things at the same time. What's that? We can be able to create a controller, we can be able to create a model and a migration using a single command. The benefit of using that command is that when you create things separate, you might need to do a lot of manual work. But in case you use this one command, when you use this one command to create everything at once, you might not be required to do all these steps manually. So what's that command? So instead of having this at your end, we're not going to use this. We shall instead use make model. We shall call it make model. Instead of make controller, it will be make model student, then space. Now when we are making model, we don't say php @make model student model. No, we just say php @make model. So what's the model name? Student. Why? When I come to the models folder here, up here, as you can see, it is under app, then models, then you check. Now one of the sample they gave us, there is already the system creates the user model by default. As you're creating your system, as you are creating this application, it came with the user model by default. Now when you look at the user model by default, it does not have user model.php as it is with the controller, because with the controller we have home controller.php, but this one is just user.php. so meaning when we are creating a model, we just simply call it that name, then we leave that space, we put a minus, then we say mcr. Now what does this command stands for? Now let me even put some space here. Now the command is saying php @sun make model. So we're going to make model, and what's the model name? The model name is student. Yes. Now student minus mcr. Now m stands for the migration, that as you're creating the model, can you please also create the migration, and then c stands for the controller, and this r after c is simply saying add resources to the controller. If you can recall, even when we are creating this home controller, we said home controller space minus r, meaning as you're creating this controller, can you please go ahead and you add these resources like these functions, as you can see all these ones. Now the same concept applies here, that when you say minus mcr, we are simply saying m stands for the migration. Remember we said we need a migration. C stands for a controller, and r after c stands for the resources that are going to be added within the controller. So already we are going to be able to create a model 1. We shall create a migration alongside the controller. So we are creating all these ones at once. So after this step, you simply click enter. So after that step, you simply click enter, and then you'll be able to create your 3 concept. That's the migration, the model, and the controller. Yes, but first wait, is this the right command? I think I needed to add some double colons here instead of a single. Let me first do this. Is it either single or double? Let me first be sure. Sorry, the command is not there. So the first one was the right one, so we go with this. Okay, so you can see we have been able to create now. Now let me first show you something. Now what we are intending to create, we are intending to create a model, a migration, and a controller using a single command. We wanted to create a model, a controller, and this using a single command. For example, if we are to check on this, we have been able to create our controller here, which is called the student, and it has added resources by default. As you have seen, these ones, the resources are here, as you can all see. Now if I proceed, in the models folder we have also a model called what? Student, which is also auto created. I told you with Laravel we work with command, and the command line tool or package that helps us to achieve all this is the @. As I was starting these tutorials, I explained the @ and what we are going to use it for. Now right now it is in action. It is giving us a lot, so you can see. So we have been able to create a controller, and then we have been able to create a model. Now the last thing that we wanted to create was a migration. And where do we find it? There is a folder called database, and under database there is another subfolder called migration. And inside the migration, if you can see the last migration here, leave alone these first three, they come along with the application as we are creating it, but the last one is called what? This one now, it is called the migration, and in our Laravel aspect it is simply representing the table in the database. Yeah. Now if you can recall in your HTML and CSS and PHP knowledge, you have been always going to the database and you create these tables manually. Yeah, if you can all recall that we have been going here, then we go to the admin, then the admin loads the backend, which is the database, and then we are able to create a database, and inside the database you go along and create what? And you create, now for example, maybe this is our table, rather this is our database called Apex Demo. When I click on it, by default it has the first three. Okay, these tables, don't mind about them, there are very many, but these are auto created when you're creating a Laravel app. But using your knowledge, we have been always going here, and then you select that maybe I need to create new, and then you stipulate the table name. Yeah, you start by saying name this, like that. But now, according to Laravel, we don't do these steps manually. What we do, we instead just come to the migration. That's why I was telling you, since we want to add data to the database, and by adding data to the database you need tables. That's why we wanted a migration. We needed a model, because I explained the model is the intermediate between the database and the controller. So that's why we needed a model. We needed a controller, because it's the one that interacts with the view to pick data from the other form that we have created, so that now the process is end to end. Now after you creating these three, the first step you do is to first of all come to your migration, and then you start adding fields. As I told you, we add them from here. And how do we add those ones? You simply just use the same syntax or semantic that they used here. For example, this is, we need a table, there is something called table, then you map it to maybe. Now what you need to know now is, first of all, what did we declare here in the student form? In the student form we declared that we shall need what? The name, the email, and the program. Now these three fields should be the same field that you're going to write within your migration. So we need the name, and the name has a data type which is a string. So we say that string, then here you say name, then if you want you can even add something called nullable or what, but you can first leave it at that, just string name. Then you go ahead and then you do the same step for another one, which is now still the email. His data type is string. Yeah, then you come here and you say this is email, but since email, you might add something called unique, because I want that if someone has already submitted that email, let another person not be able to submit the same email. So I can just add this unique. So meaning for any other type where you need maybe one user to own that particular let's say field in the database. For example, let's say telephone number. You want that when you submit a telephone number, now instead of another person submitting the same telephone number, you lock that. So you add this attribute called unique. Yes. Then lastly, we need to create another field for. We are creating another field for the program, and also it's a string. It's a string value, so we shall need a string as program. Yeah. So we have been, and make sure you terminate always when you create this at the end. Make sure you terminate. You follow this video as it is. Yeah. Now after creating these fields, now these fields are simply representing the same fields that you could create in your table here. So for us now in Laravel, what we do, we simply just create them from here. Now after you have updated your table, that's the migration table, you have to save, Ctrl S. Then after that, the moment you create your migration and you add those fields, the next step is to go to the model. Yeah, you have to go to the model and you update the model about these fields. And how do we do that? Now picking an example from the user model, maybe if I scroll down here, there is some concept called the protected variable. As you're seeing this protected variable, the same protected variable, this one is the one that I can pick from here. I just copy it from here, then I can take it here at the models. That's what we want. But remember, this protected variable of the user model, it had name, email, and password. Yet when you look at our table here, it has name, email, and program. So what I need to do is to come here and I need to update this one. So instead of this one being a password, it has to be a program. So this is how you update a model about what you have created in your table. Now this field is much needed because, as I told you, a model acts as a security guard. It acts as a mediator between the database and the controller. So whatever goes to the database has to pass through a model. That's why the same fields that we have declared here in the database, by default, when you find this migration, it has the ID here and the timestamp. Leave these ones as default. We just add these ones in between. Yeah, don't tamper with this one. Don't delete anything. Just come and you add these three as we have declared them. But now for this migration or this table to be aware, rather to be checked by the controller, rather by the model, we need to add this protected variable. And if you remember those access modifiers, we have the protected, the public, the private. So you can recall all your Java knowledge, but now we are using it here. So we are saying protected at variable. So what are we protecting? We need the name, the email, and the program. So this one is mapping directly to the student table because we have a student model here. Now after that, so we have already created this, you have to save. So we have created this student model and we have updated it with the right information, the same way we have created the migration. So having finished that, the other step that we need to do next is first of all to run the application and we'll be able to see the other view. Then we can see the next step. But before we do that, we need to come to the controller here. Yeah, remember we have already created our view somewhere here. So we need to come to the controller here, then come at the index page, or actually not the index page, we can use the create page. So you come at the create function here and then you return, then it's a view, then bracket, then you call the student, then you terminate at this. So the student we are simply calling this bread that we have created here called the student. So we are calling it under the create method. That's why you're seeing something like this. Then after that, when you create your view, you need to come to the routes and then you update a route about that view. So you simply come here and then you shall just need to copy this and this paste it down. But remember, here we use the home controller, but right now as we are developing this application, we have created a new controller called the student. So the first step to do is to import the same controller up here. So you can simply just copy this, Ctrl C, then you come below and then Ctrl V, and then you just update this one. Instead of name, this one has to be student. Yeah, because we wanted to import, we need to import this from this so that we can access it here in the route. So after that, you can also simply copy this yeah, and then paste it down, and then instead of this one we shall have create. So we can say create, then this one is also create, and then this one is create. But remember, I have not yet updated the control. I need to update this control as well as a student. So now what I have done, simply I've pointed at the student controller, which is this one, and I'm pointing at the method. If you can go back here, the method that we are using to access this student route, rather this student view, is the create method. So if I happen to go back to this, so what I've just said, I'll need a route called student, which points at the function called student. This name, we shall use it in the navigation. For now, I'll just leave it at that. So we shall need this one now. After this, we can now first try to run our application to see whether we are able to view that. So to run the application, need php @sun, then serve, then you run this. Now when you run this, you can open any browser at your end, then you just copy. You always ensure that you copy this. Yeah, you can just simply copy this, Ctrl+C, but don't overpress it to stop the terminal from running. Just Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, then you run it from here. Okay, so wait, now this is the home page, but remember, this one we created it in the previous video. Now when you come back here at the route, we have said /create, meaning when I come to this, I need to come here and then I put a /create, yeah, like that. So don't delete this first URL. You say /create, then I enter. Now it will take me to this. Now you see we have the enter username, yeah, enter your name, email, program, and then submit. Where have we found it? At the create route. Why? Because we created a route as create, which is calling this. So now we have successfully run our application and it runs. Now what we need to do next is, how we're going to be able to enter data here, then we submit, and then we view it in the database. Yeah, we need to see how we add things here, then you submit to the database. Now what we need to do next is, so we need now to create an actual function that is going to pick data from the form, and then it submits it to the database. Yeah, now how do we do that? Now step number 1 is to come here at the form, and then you first update these fields of the name. We need this to update this and this and this. Now if you're recalling your PHP knowledge, as you were picking data from the form to the database, you needed this name property. So we need to update this name property by its attribute. For example, the name, or for name will be name, will remain name. This one will remain as email, and then this one will be program. You have to follow this video as it is. This is name to be name because we want to pick the student name. We needed to pick the student email. That's why this name is email. The property name is email, and then this one is program. So we are done with this. Now after updating this, now you go straight to your controller. Yeah, you go straight to your controller here, and then you scroll down. There is a function called store. So now this function called store is where we declare our methods that we shall need to add data to the database. So how do you do so? Now if I happen to scroll up here, you see that now for us to be able to add data to the database, we need a model. Now when you use the other one command, it imports everything that you need into, like it puts everything that you need in its position. For example, it already imported our model up here. As you can see, use app model. Now this is the path to the model. It is app models, and then you pick the model, which is the student. So we are going to use the same model below here by declaring a variable. So we shall declare a variable here, and we shall call it student, and then we shall equate it to new. Yeah, we shall say new, then we call the other model called the student. Yeah, and then you terminate. Now what we are trying to create here, if you are recalling your Java knowledge, we are simply creating an object here. We are simply creating an object here called the student, and we are picking it from a class which is the student, and the student is representing a model. Then from there you come here, and then you say still student using the same object. You point at its name, then you say equals to @ request, then you pick the name. yeah, at request name, then you do like this. Now what are we simply doing? We are simply saying that student name. Now what we are simply pointing at, when you set this student name, this one is simply coming here to the model, and we are pointing at this attribute in the database or in the table. So when I come back here, when I say at request, yeah, you can even say input, then you put the what, or you can simply just point at this. So now this one is the one that is pointing at this, okay, let me follow the link. It's the one that is pointing at this. Now this, the name attribute here, this one is represented at the other request. When you look at this at request and then we say name, so meaning the next step, if we want to pick maybe the email, we shall still use the same thing, student, then this, and we say this is email, then we say equals to at request, then this, and you say this is email. So you do the same thing, make sure you terminate at the end. You still go for another one, which is the program. The program equals to at request, then this one program. Then lastly is to come we still look at this object, and then we say this save, then you terminate. So now this one, it is equivalent to your SQL statement, the other than that you used, where you said insert into table, then you declare attributes, that's the name, the email, and the program, then you say values, and then you start picking the variables that you declared, if you're recalling your PHP knowledge. Now in Laravel, since Laravel uses ORM, the eloquent relation mapping, yeah, ORM, yeah, object oriented mapping, yeah. So now what we do, we simply use objects to map to our database. Now what we have done here, we have now simply created the same SQL statement that is going to help us add data to the database. So we have created this. Now after creating this function with these attributes, now what you need to do is to create a route that points to this, yeah. Now we need a route that points to this, and how do you create that route? You simply come back here, and then since already we imported our student and we are still creating within the same controller, so you don't need to import it again. You import it once, and then you can just simply come here and you copy this, and then you take it down here. But you have to change this one. This one is not a get method, it's a post method. So you say post here, then you come here and you change this. Now this one will be store, even this one is going to be store, and then also this one is going to be store. So we are going to have store. Why? When we go back to our controller, the function we are pointing at is called store, but the method here, this is a post method. As you can see, this was a get method, this is a get method, this is post. So we have put, we have delete. Now all those ones are methods. For now we are using a post method, but the route we are pointing at is called the store, and store. Now having created this route, we need now to go on the next step of adding this route to the form. So we need to come here and we update our form about that route. So similarly to your PHP knowledge, you had to go in the action, and then you be like, you stipulate where that action is going to be performed. So here for us, we have to come here and we say, we use double braces like that, curly braces, and then you say route, then bracket, and then you name the route that you're going to point at. My route is called store. Now the method here is going to be post. Okay, sorry. The method is going to be post in capital letter. Then the other thing you need to add, yeah, there is something called the CSRF token. This, you just write CSR, then it comes like that. So you need this at CSRF. Now what does this stand for? This is called a cross-site request forgery. Now Laravel being so secure, if you recall some of the features of Laravel, so for every request that is coming from the server, the client server, that's the user interface, it must come with a token. to ensure that no one is hacking your system, we add this at CSRF token. So in every form that you create, you don't need to forget this. You need to add it there. So now, what did we create here? Now we pointed at the route called store, and this store, the one that you're looking at here, is the one that was always we are calling name. Now this is like navigation. Yeah, here this is, we are pointing at the route that is going to perform this actual function, and that route is called what? Is called store. Yeah, so we are done with this. Yeah, having finished, now what we need to do is to test whether everything it is at ease. But before you test, you have to leave this one running, and then you open another terminal here, and you have to run this command. It's called php at sun migrate. You have to write this php at sun migrate. Why? Since we created our migration, which was called student, this table, so when you check in the database, that table is not existing. If I happen to refresh here, when I come here, I don't see that table here. Yeah, so meaning for me to be able to update my table in Laravel, I need to run this command php at sun migrate. Then I enter. Now the moment I enter, you see that migration, it ran this. When I come back and I refresh, maybe the same, you see that right now we have another table called what? Student, but this table is empty. It is just having this and this and this. So what we need to do now is to simply now test. We need to simply test. Now how do we test? Now we come back here and we refresh, then we try submitting. Maybe I'm going to submit, my name is Moshin, and then I'll submit email as Moshin this. Then the program, maybe I'm doing business computing, then I submit. Now the moment I submit, I'll see something blank like this. But this is not only what I want. I want to just be sure whether that has been submitted. So I'll come back here and I hit refresh. The moment I hit refresh, you can see my data has been submitted to the database. So we have been able to create our data in the database. But let me just sum up everything. So I have created our view called student. We have used the one command to create the three things, that is the controller, the model, and the migration. We went ahead and we updated our migration with the fields. We updated the model with the same fields. We created some functions in the controller. We created the route. We ran a command php at sun migrate. Then we are able to test, and everything worked as it is. So make sure that at your end you follow each and everything in the same way I've tried to create it. If you're lucky, it will run the first time without messing it up. But even if you mess it up, you have room to troubleshoot. Do not fear bugs. Don't fear when things break. It is an opportunity for you to learn where you have made a mistake, so that in the future I don't make the same mistake. So having seen this, allow me to stop here. We shall see in another video or in another episode where we shall look at now how do we retrieve that data back and we display it in a table, and how do we delete, how do we update, all those things. So for now, let's stop from here. Let me see you in the next video.